I'm a black woman living in Roxbury, and I don't have the privilege of, ignoring this problem. For many years, I feel like that they've ignored the problem, and ignoring the problem has never made it go away. And so I think it's an obligation morally, but more so as a community member, to stand up and resist it.
So that right there is two-bit race hustler Monica Cannon Grant, and that clip is actually from back in 2017, when it looks like I found maybe her earliest instance of getting media attention, and she has decided that she's going to go after a post-Charlottesville free speech rally that happened in Massachusetts that, of course, was permitted, and she's making the case that free speech is actually white supremacy. And in addition to that, she also refers to Alex Jones as somebody who stands for white supremacy.
No, well, it's hard to say one thing and do something different, right? So you say you're distancing yourself, but your lineup, Kyle Chapman, Joe Biggs, Alex Jones, they all stand for white supremacy, white nationalists, and that ideology. Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. Ideology. So you can't say you don't stand for something, but everybody that you have on your speaking agenda stands for exactly just that.
Which really just shows you what a pathetic and ridiculous individual she actually is. However, like many of these people who went from low-level, street-level race hustling, Monica Cannon Grant was elevated to prominence in Massachusetts post the death of George Floyd during the Black Lives Matter riots, during the hysteria that followed the Black Lives Matter riots, and she ended up getting to a point where she was the head of a fraudulent nonprofit that was actually donated to by district attorney's office, among other governmental organizations, to which she took that money and immediately pocketed it. However, there's a lot of people that are writing articles right now that she's pled guilty to these crimes, making the case that Monica Cannon Grant was one of the good ones who lost her way. Monica Cannon Grant was this beloved individual, and nobody would have expected her to be a two-bit race hustler. But in reality, if you look at her history, if you look at her live streams, this woman was obviously a nasty, horrible woman, and she was destined to defraud her donors, defraud the taxpayers, and that's exactly what these video compilations end up proving.
Is to wake up black, regardless of how many educated gang symbols you have at the end of your name, regardless of how close in proximity you are to white supremacy, regardless of how many white penises you ride. And I am mad at you, sis, because if you ride in that mother squad, get you that house, boo. Get your 40 acres and your mule. Just don't forget that you said. Okay? Okay? All right, cool. That's where we at.
And if somebody don't get some racial bias training to these white officers, we are one incident away from a race war. One incident away from a race war. But
so to me, the story of a Black Lives Matter activist turning out to be a criminal, turning out to be somebody who defrauded donors, who defrauded taxpayers, is not the actual story. That's like saying that fish swim in the water. Everybody knows that. Everybody understands that. The real story is that we had tax dollars going to this woman who spewed anti-white hatred and venom before this money ended up being sent to her. Everybody should have known that she was a scammer, that she was an anti-white racist, and yet she was given tax dollars anyway, and of course she spent it on lavish trips, all sorts of scams. And by the way, in addition to all of this, this woman was also claiming unemployment benefits from the taxpayer. So what we're going to talk about today is this whole case from start to finish. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Monica Cannon Grant and her husband are facing serious charges of fraud and conspiracy, accused of spending money meant for community causes on their own rent, hotels, restaurants, and more. Monica Cannon Grant started the organization Violence in Boston in 2017 with a mission to help survivors of violence. And in 2020, she became a prominent figure organizing protests following the killing of George Floyd.
We have to realize that, like, all of us have to work together. And if some of us are doing a little bit better than others, then we should reach in to help.
So first of all, right off the top, I think it's absolutely crucial for us to point out that the reporter that's actually covering this particular story is an attractive woman. Now, normally, I wouldn't point this out. Normally, I wouldn't talk about this. I would stick to the facts, logic, and whatnot, the data and the information, but you preverts out there would get angry if I did not. Now, of course, we should not be surprised that a two-bit race hustler who founded an organization that nobody cared about, Violence in Boston, back in 2017, was elevated to prominence by these very same local media organizations post the George Floyd Black Lives Matter riots and all of the chaos and hysteria that ultimately ended up ensuing. And we also shouldn't be surprised, like I said earlier on, that she ended up pocketing this money while also scamming the unemployment system, because in reality, when these people talk about helping blacks and saving these innocent Baba Angel Aladdins, what they're actually saying is that they want the money. In fact, I actually have an excerpt of a video where a representative of Monica Cannon Grant gives you the entire philosophy behind this organization.
We have to realize that, like, all of us have to work together. And if some of us are doing a little bit better than others, then we should reach in to help.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
And again, we also shouldn't be surprised that these people end up committing fraud time and time again, because the entire premise of their movement is fraudulent. There isn't an epidemic of evil white racist cops going around town killing off innocent Baba Angel black people on their way to church. If there were actual instances of these cases, then we would be able to look at the body cam footage that is now available and make that assessment. But what happens more times than not whenever we see the body cam footage? We see that these people pose an imminent threat to officers, they're attacking officers, and even when you factor in the 9 unarmed people in the entire country that are killed by the police each and every year, what you find out is that most of them are either trying to grab the cops' guns, so they're in the act of arming themselves, or they're driving a vehicle at the police officers, which again gets incorporated in the unarmed black person being killed by the police data set. So it was always fraudulent from the jump. But let us get into the details of this particular indictment that, again, she ultimately ended up pleading guilty to.
Now, an 18-count federal indictment reveals scathing accusations that Cannon Grant and her husband, Clark Grant, used charitable donations on themselves. According to court documents, Cannon Grant and her husband presented themselves as unpaid leaders of the nonprofit. But authorities say Cannon Grant paid herself an income of more than $25,000 in 2020 and more than $170,000 in 2021.
So you can see right here the elevation of the fraud that they're committing. Obviously, in 2020, when that year was starting out, she ended up getting less money for herself. However, under the Black Lives Matter hysteria that happened mid-2020, her organization ended up getting way more money, and she started paying herself a 6-figure salary while telling the public that she was just volunteering for this organization. In addition to that, she was also collecting unemployment benefits that enhanced COVID unemployment benefits. And the thing about this is that if you go to the original indictment, what you can end up seeing for yourself is that she admitted to doing this to her husband in text messages for the world to see. And guess what? The federal government had a copy of those text messages. Let's read it so we can be 100% clear about who this woman is. Unemployment caught my ass. Asked me to provide documents by June unless I'll have to pay it all back. Now again, this message doesn't say unemployment is accusing me of something. It doesn't say these are false allegations, or as the super mayor would call it, false allegations.
False allegations and not facts.
It says unemployment caught my ass, as in she is caught dead to rights defrauding the unemployment system, and she's very upset at the prospect that she would have to pay back the money that she stole from the taxpayers, while of course condemning the evil white supremacist system, even though again she's defrauding that, she's begging for money for that, she's essentially a welfare queen. And yes, that doesn't even get past the tip of the iceberg, because there's actually even more from this local news segment that again she ended up pleading guilty to.
In June 2019, Cannon Grant accepted a $6,000 grant for violence prevention from a Massachusetts district attorney's office. Prosecutors say that money instead went to a nail salon, going out to eat, hotel rooms, fuel costs, and car rentals.
Now again, this sounds like the most ghetto trashy stuff that you can possibly imagine, but the thing is, these are 2-bit race hustlers that are being elevated by woke representatives in and around the Boston area, so they get taxpayer money from the district attorney's office that could go to, prosecuting repeat offenders, and instead it goes into their pockets, in which they spend it on hotels, they spend it on going to the salon, and all sorts of ridiculous things. And that unemployment that I documented, that she acknowledged that she was caught defrauding, it was to the tune of over $100,000.
Authorities also say the couple collected more than $100,000 in pandemic unemployment assistance, though Cannon Grant was earning tens of thousands of dollars in consulting fees, and her husband was earning weekly pay from a job. The couple's accused of using the money on plane tickets, new furniture, to defray the cost of a motorcycle and more.
So yeah, as you could see right there, they ended up collecting over $100,000 in, of course, unemployment benefits. That again, the text messages exposed that they knew they were doing fraudulently. But also, I want to harp on something that you guys might not know based on the reading of this particular case, which is they used some of that money that they defrauded from the unemployment system in order to defer some payments related to a motorcycle. And the reason this is actually crucial is because this fraud ended up leading to a tragedy in that Clark Grant, the husband of the woman that we are talking about today, who was also indicted at the same time as her, actually died in a motorcycle accident post this indictment dropping. So the very motorcycle that they very likely purchased with these fraudulent funds ultimately ended up being the undoing of Mr. Clark Grant. And in that regard, I understand that this is a fraud situation. I understand that these were not good people. I will say I am sorry for the loss for Monica Cannon Grant, because it's one thing for you to be a scumbag and defraud the system and whatnot, but the fact is she was still married. It was her husband / partner in crime, and this man ended up dying as a consequence of the evil that they were perpetuating on the city of Boston, Massachusetts overall, and again against the United States of America. So there's an element of absolute tragedy in there. But what's even more crazy than this is that despite the fact that we have a lengthy history of this woman being an anti-white racist, a horrible person, a race hustler, a scammer, all of that, is that post this, she was actually invited to a school to give a speech to children about how, oh my God, what a horrible situation the police have put them under. And it's ridiculous that she was paid to give this speech after she was already under indictment for defrauding the taxpayers.
I made the front page of the Boston Globe 3 times in 1 year because I called the mayor the M word. I'm not going to say it, but it's mother something. Okay? I wouldn't advise you do that. I don't want nobody saying that Monica said call your teachers or anybody the M word, but that's what I did because he was pissing me off. And I want to show you that it's the bottom one. This is what I received when I made the front page of the Boston Globe, because I'm the first person in history to call the mayor the M word. Right?
Now, the speech wasn't good. Obviously, it was incredibly distasteful, but when confronted on the idea that she was being brought in as somebody who had all of these indictments and charges hanging over her head, she said, "I'm innocent until proven guilty. I'm an innocent Baba Angel Aladdin, and you should never trust law enforcement because evil white racism is under every rock," which, oh my God, I'm sorry, I think I just got startled because evil white racism might have jumped out from over there. Everybody watch out for the evil white racism.
Can you understand why they might be upset given the fact that you're under federal investigation?
No, because I'm innocent until proven guilty.
Today, we spoke with Monica, not only about her presence at the school and whether she stole money.
No, I didn't.
As a mom, would you have had a problem with someone who is under federal indictment giving a speech to your kids?
No. Because the people closest to the problem understand how to solve it. I am not the first black activist. In fact, there are 326 black activists facing federal charges.
But also referenced the derogatory phrase she called former Boston Mayor Marty Walsh.
It's not controversial to use a curse word. I think people who curse are extremely intelligent.
Now, even though she gave that whole spiel about how she was innocent until proven guilty, an innocent Baba Angel Aladdin who didn't do nothing wrong except try to help black people in a white supremacist system, she ultimately ended up pleading guilty to these charges because guess what? She did it. She was caught dead to rights. The evidence was overwhelming. So Monica Cannon Grant should serve a significant amount of prison time due to the fact that she defrauded the taxpayers from a position of trust that she never had. But the fact is, she did have it at that time. And obviously, we can't have this nonsense. And now this is multiple different Black Lives Matter type organizations, including the main Black Lives Matter organization, that has come under suspicion for fraudulent purchases, wasting money, and of course, stealing from their donors. And while these people are horrible, they donated to a terrible organization, the fact is we need consequences, we need justice, because unlike the folks over at Black Lives Matter and these affiliated groups, we actually care about facts, we actually care about justice, and we actually care about solving problems. And guess what? Those problems are very oftenly caused by the very criminals that they try to defend. But of course, I'm going to leave this up to all of you out there in the audience. I want to know what you guys think about all this. As per usual, if you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about another Black Lives Matter leader going down for fraud. Till next time.